So, as we begin, let's begin with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we are grateful that you are a loving, merciful, wonderful God. And we ask for you to draw us close to you, to work out your will and way. Be our teacher and help us to understand the deep things of God. Help us to understand ourselves and better of you. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So we are going to go on a journey together or continue on a journey together to a new perspective. That's what we're looking for is a new perspective. Now, perspectives are powerful because perspectives determine how and where we search for answers. Um, and perspectives limit our conclusions. And so your conclusions are going to fit in with whatever your worldview is. It's going to be fit into that context. And so if your perspective is limited, then the conclusions that you come to are going to be limited. And the even the questions that you ask in your search for answers is going to be limited, and how you search for those answers is going to be limited based upon that perspective. And so adopting a different perspective gives you the opportunity of finding new answers, asking new questions, finding new possibilities and new solutions to the problems that you haven't been able to solve before. And so that's one reason why I'm really interested in perspectives and obtaining new perspectives. Now, Michelle, I'm going to tell you Michelle's story. She came to us, I don't know, a few years ago, and she had ovarian cancer. She had 11 tumors in her abdomen. She had been through chemotherapy twice, and each time everything just continued growing and spreading. And they were suggesting an experimental regimen for her. And so she decided, well, instead of going in that direction, I'm going to go to Uchee Pines. And so she did. She came here to Uchee Pines, and she was one of my guests. And of course, we did lifestyle interventions. We used natural remedies and hydrotherapy and diet and exercise and other things like that. But Michelle had a particular perspective, and her perspective was that disease happens randomly. And yes, it's influenced by risk factors, but in general, it's kind of a random occurrence. That physical diseases have physical causes, and because of that, the physical causes are treated with physical solutions. And so medications like chemotherapy, diet and lifestyle and so on are the cure to the problem. That was her perspective, and you might be looking at it and saying, well, that's my perspective too. And I'm having her picture upside down just to let you know that that's an upside down perspective. So, what else was going on in her life? Well, I came to find out that she never knew who her father was. Her mother was in and out of the family picture, more out than in. She was raised by her grandparents, and her mother would come back into the scene every once in a while and just create a lot of emotional and relational conflict in their life. And so she resented her mother and the choices that her mother made. And there was just a lot of conflict and bitterness that was there related to that relationship. And she believed that she had a right to resent her mother because of all of the things that her mother had done. Now, when I was counseling with her and we were going through the law of life principles, I helped her to see that she could love her mother, not because she could, but because God loves her mother. And she is to be a channel of God's love to her mother, not the source of it. And that when she comes and she takes of God's love, then she can give that love away to her mother. And she can allow the love of God to swallow up that resentment and bitterness that she had harbored so that she can actually harbor true love for her mother. And she began to work on this process. By the end of her session here, her cancer markers, which were elevated before, were back to normal. And about 2 months later, we got a report from her that a repeat CT scan showed that 6 of the 11 tumors were gone, and the 5 remaining tumors were smaller than what they had been originally. But I found out then a few months later that she was distraught. Her cancer markers were back up. And so I talked with her, and come to find out, mother had come back into the picture. again. And chaos had broken loose. And well, Michelle had forgotten most of what we had talked about and the new perspective, and she'd reverted back to the old perspective. And so she was back into the resentment and bitterness and so on. And yes, her cancer markers were back up. And so I counseled with her for a while, helped her to regain that new worldview, that new perspective. And next time I talked to her, her cancer markers were back down. So in Michelle's case, you could see a direct correlation between her thought processes, her worldview, and her cancer and its progression. And in fact, that's not an isolated case. There are many cases that we've had where we see disease reversing when an individual begins to think differently. Why? Because thinking is a major, major impact upon disease and its development, and it has a huge impact upon healing. So the questions that we can ask is, what do we believe and why do we believe it? What do we not believe and why do we not believe it? How do we come to the conclusions that we do? And this we need to understand. We are not taught, I mean, the thing that we do the most in life is thinking, but we're never taught how to think. We're not taught why we think the way that we do. And so we do need to understand that a bit. I'm not going to go extensively into it, but just a few illustrations that show how we think. All right. So here you have everything about perspective. What do you see here? Anybody see a vase? Right. I mean, not a vase. What is that? Anyway, so you see a container that's there and a handle and a base and all that kind of stuff. But anybody see two faces about to kiss? Well, I don't know if they're about to kiss, but anyways, they're close to each other, right? So it just depends on your perspective as to what you see. Do you see two faces or do you see a chalice or a vase sitting here? What about this picture over here? What do you see? Well, some people look at the picture and they see a young lady with, hair and apparently a hat and a feather and so on, and the shawl. Other people looked at it and they saw an old lady with a big chin and her mouth right here and this big nose and eyelashes and so on, right? So it just depends on what you're looking at as to determine your perspective. Is it a young woman or is it an old woman? Is it a vase or is it or a cup, or is it two faces looking together? Your perspective determines what you see, right? Determines what you see, what you perceive out of what you see. Now, the truth about how we think is that we reject information that we determine to be false. We always reject information that we determine to be false, but we believe information which we determine to be true. We are created in such a way that we only take in the truth. We only take in what we believe to be true, right? So the only way that we can take in a lie is if we believe that the lie is true. That's the only way that we can take it in, because we are created so that we only take in truth, right? And so can we trust, but in order to determine whether something is a truth or whether something is a lie, we have to make an evaluation on that information to make that determination of whether it's a truth or whether it's a lie. And the question is, can we trust the system that we use to determine whether something is true or whether something is false? For example, here is a pencil. And the question that I have for you is, how long is this pencil? What's its length? And so, somebody might say, okay, well, maybe it's 7 inches. And somebody might say, well, I think it's 10 inches. And somebody might say, well, I think it's 9. And somebody might say it's 8. And somebody might say it's 6.5, and so on. So whatever you determined in your mind that you thought that the length of that pencil was, how much or how strongly do you believe that your estimation is correct? Well, what is your answer based upon? And what would help you so that you were more sure of your estimate of the length of that pencil, right? We think that statistics help us to come closer to the truth. But if we had all, let's see, we've got 82 people that are registered or that are on right now. So if we had every person, every of the 82 write down what they think the length was, we could do some statistics with that. We could take all of those numbers, we could add them all together, divide them by 82, and then we would have the average estimate of the length of that pencil. Do you think that the average estimate of the length of that pencil is exactly the length of the pencil? Well, so does an aggregate, a collective evaluation make the thing more accurate? The answer is no, it doesn't, if the each individual's estimate is based upon something that is subjective. If it's all based upon something that's subjective, then it doesn't matter how many people you have doing it, what kind of statistics that you do to it. None of the numbers are going to be trustworthy because the basic information upon which it is built is subjective and can't be trusted. So your estimate of this pencil is simply your estimate of the length of this pencil. What if I told you that this pencil was 32 feet long? Would you believe me? Right? Well, you look at it and you say, well, no, of course I wouldn't believe you. That's way off. There's no pencils that are 32 feet long. So how would we solve the problem? Well, you need an external standard. You need a measure, like a measuring tape. You need an external standard that is fixed and that does not change, that is used by everyone. And then everyone can use that standard and can measure the pencil by the standard and be confident that their estimate of the length of the pencil is accurate. Why? Because they're using a standard to measure it by, rather than a subjective evaluation. So if we want to know the truth, then we must have a standard that we use to evaluate the information to determine whether the thing is true or whether it's not, right? Whether it's false. And so if we don't have a standard that does not change, if we do not have a standard that is not set and fixed and is perfect, then we don't know whether what we determine to be true is true and what we determine what is false, because that determination is not based upon a standard. So we must have that standard. Now, I said that it was 32 feet long, and well, would you believe me now that indeed it is 32 feet long? This happens to be one of the largest pencils in the world in Casey, Illinois, in front of the pencil factory. And so, yes, my estimate is much closer to the truth than yours is, but that's because I knew information that you didn't. So let's put together a puzzle to help us to understand why we think the way that we do, or how we think. So here we've got our board. This is our puzzle board. It's blank, and here's a piece of our puzzle. It's a simple light blue, obviously. Where do you want to put this piece? Well, it looks light blue. It looks like it might be sky color, maybe. And we know that skies are usually up. So let's just put it over here for now. So here's our next piece. Our next piece is black. Well, we know in most scenes that if you have something that's like this and something that's like that, this usually is up and this is usually down. So let's just throw this down here and let's see what else we get. Oh, here's a piece that gives us some perspective, right? This piece gives us a bit of perspective. Now we have a little bit of a mountain, and so the mountain is probably going to go somewhere in between. So let's just throw it right over here. What piece do we have next? Oh, okay, so now we have another piece of mountain, and it looks like it might fit. It might fit with what we already have. So we have a little bit of context that we can build on. And so let's go ahead and just throw this right over here. Oh, there we go, it matches, right? That's great. Now we have another piece, all right? So that looks like, well, it wouldn't fit on this side because you got all that white over there. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it would fit over here. Let's try it over here and see. Oh, look, it matches. All right. And we have another scene. All right, so we've got another piece and it looks like it might match over here. So let's put it over here. And indeed it does. All right, so now we're starting to develop more context. We're seeing, now we've got an idea of what this picture is like because we're starting to develop context. And whoa, we get a big piece here. It looks like it's pretty big. It's still continued mountain scene, and um, it looks like it might fit over here. So let's put it over here. And oh, indeed, it does. So we're really filling out the picture. Oh, we have another sky picture. So we're not sure. We don't have enough context for the sky to know where this is going to go. So let's just throw it over here for now. And oh, we've got a big piece now. It's got a little bit of mountain scene behind it, but we've got a lot of trees. And here we're starting to develop trees, and we're got some mountain in the background. So let's just drop it right down here. And indeed, look at that. Look at that. Um, well, this is interesting. So now we have a piece, and we've got obviously there is some kind of mountainous something behind it, but all of our trees and everything is upside down. What do you want to do with this puzzle piece? Do you want to turn it upside down or right side up? But I think we've pretty much run out of space over here. We don't have any more place on the puzzle board, so we're not exactly sure what to do with this piece. So let's just put it over here for now, and see if we can get some more context. All right, so we don't know exactly what we're doing with this piece. Here we have another piece that we've got some sky, looks like some sky. It's the tops of a few trees and looks like it might go right over here. So let's bring it over, and indeed there it goes. All right, so we're filling that out. Oh, all right, so we have some more treetop. We're pretty much done with treetops over here, but we still have some left there. So let's drop it over here. All right, there we go, there it goes. But now we're starting to see a problem, all right? There's a problem. The question is, what do we do with these, right? What do we do with these? Because we're starting to see a progression. We have a bit lighter, and then we're going darker as we're coming up. And these guys just appear too light to be where they're at. So now we got some question marks. What do we do with this? What do we do with this? Where is this guy gonna go? So far, we don't have enough context to know where. So, oh, here's another piece. All right, so that's obviously lower from this picture, and we have a tree line, and looks like that tree might end right there, and that clump of trees might go right there. So let's put it right down here, and boom, oh, looky there, it fits. Very good. So now we're getting more of a context in our picture. That's really good. Oh no, another upside down one. What do we do with this? Because we already have now a complete mountain scene, and we don't have any more space that we can go off any of the edges. But now we definitely have a very clear mountain scene here, but it's upside down. What are we going to do with it? You want to flip it right side up? If you do, well, you don't have any place to put it. What do you want to do with it? Well, now we start looking at it, and we look at this tree that's in the center of it and the peak that's behind it. And we look over here. Oh, look at this tree and look at that peak, that tree and that peak. Oh, all right, so let's try the piece right down here. Look at this. All right, now this piece that we just put in changes our perspective. It fills out the picture in such a way so that we start looking at it and going, oh, now I start to get an idea of the pieces that I didn't know what to do with. Now they're starting to have a little bit of context that I can work with, right? Now what about this piece here? Well, obviously we have sky that's getting lighter. This is black, so it's not going to end up at the bottom. So maybe, well, this is pretty black over here. Let's move it over in this direction. These guys are really light, and it looks like they're going to fit with this sky down here. So we can keep that in mind as we keep building our context. All right, so here we have more trees that are upside down. And we have some more mountain scenes that are upside down. And these guys are kind of looking like that little part right there is looking a bit like that little part right there. So let's try it right down here. And oh, indeed, it fits. It fits. That looks good. Oh, hang on. Now we have some context for these guys. This guy looks like it'll probably fit in here, and this guy up here looks like it'll probably fit down here. And indeed, when we move that over and we move this over, there we found our place for them. Very good. All right, now we have another piece, and it's got just a little bit of tree in the tip of it, and it looks like there's probably a little bit of tree tip left off of that piece. So let's move it over on this side, and there we go. Look at that. Now we've got some missing pieces, and we've got some context for our piece here, and look, it fits perfectly. And now, let's see, what else do we have? Oh, this is going to help us a lot. This looks like that there, so let's put it underneath that there. And indeed, there's a great reflection, but we're missing something, and I think I know where it is. It's this piece right here, and we can put it right in place. Oh, there it goes. That looks like the rest of our mountain scene upside down, and so we're going to pull it right down here. And this guy is pretty dark, and he has this piece missing with a little white cloud down here. It looks like it probably fits right over here, so let's scoot it over. And that's a light piece, matches what's left of the light pieces down here. And then finally, we've got this dark piece, and it goes up here. Oh, and look at our picture. What a beautiful picture, right? So that's beautiful. We have a beautiful picture that we have put together. But it looks really good. But do you realize that there's a problem with our picture? What if our picture is upside down? Huh. And in fact, this is right side up. How would we know? How would you know if it was upside down or right side up? I mean, it looks good. It looked like a great picture. Well, there are a few things and help you know. This is the original one that you put together, the original way. There are a few things that help you to realize that you're upside down. One, if you pay attention to the details. If you really pay close attention to the details, you'll find that there are actually ripples right here and over here. And there are no ripples in the reflection down here, right? Another thing that would tell you that you're upside down is if you knew the law. What do I mean if you knew the law? Well, if you have looked at mountain scenes and mountain lake scenes before, what you realize, and it's a principle of physics, is that the sky is always lighter than the water's reflection. The sky is always lighter than the water's reflection. And so here we have the lighter below and the darker above. So that would give us a clue that we're upside down. And finally, if we had the original picture to work with as our pattern, then we could see that our picture is upside down. So what we need when we are putting, this is a puzzle, but this puzzle represents information. It represents pieces of information, right? And yes, it is a long illustration. So this represents pieces of information. And when those pieces of information come in, you have to put them into a context. You've got to put them into context. And certain pieces are difficult because they don't give you much context. Other pieces that you get, they start giving you context and you start getting an idea of what's going on. And it helps you to find out where other pieces are going. And then when you get pieces that are, you can get particular pieces of information that challenge your worldview. If those pieces are rejected, you never you never change your worldview. But if you incorporate those pieces, then they can help to change your whole worldview. But then, how do you know that your whole worldview is right? How do you know your context is right? Well, you have to have a standard, an external standard. The truth does not contradict itself. There can be many pieces, like a puzzle, to the truth. And if true, all the pieces will be complementary. And if there's a contradiction, then there's something that's false, something that's an error, because the truth never contradicts itself. And there can only be one truth, but there are many errors and there are many lies. For example, if this sequence of numbers and shapes, sizes and so on, if that represents the truth, then a lie or an error is simply a change in the order of the truth. So instead of being 1 and 2, now it's 2 and 1. So you can change the chronological order. You can change the size or the importance of it, and that makes it a lie. You can change its orientation. Instead of one being up and the other down, then the other is up and the one is down, right? That makes a lie. You can omit part of it. Instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can have 2, 4, 5. 3 is missing, right? Or you can add what doesn't belong. Instead of being 8, 9, now you have 8A, 9, and so on. So there is only one truth, but there can be many, many variations of lies that are out there. And that puts the enemy at an advantage when it comes to presenting multiple information. What I'm going to do is just switch to another PowerPoint right here. And no, not from start. Let me get right back to it. All right. And all right, I'm going to share my screen again. And we're going to go on from here. All right, so we have needs. And what do our needs tell us? Well, our needs can tell us that a number of things about ourselves. First of all, can you create that which you need? Well, the answer is no, you can't, because if you could, it wouldn't be a need of yours. You can't create the oxygen that you need to breathe. You can't create the water you need to drink. You can't create the food that you need to eat. You can't create any of it. It resides outside of you and you must bring it in, right? The body cannot create what it needs, neither can the spirit create what it needs, right? So the question is, do we need love? Do you need love? Well, the answer is yes, we need love. Then can you create or produce love? The answer to that is no, you can't, right? Because if you could, it wouldn't be a need of yours. Just like you can't create the water that you need to survive, that you need to drink to survive. An example. If I'm thirsting and I continue thirsting and I don't drink the water, well, the water resides outside of me. I can't create it. I can't just create the water and then all of a sudden have it. I've got to go get the water and then I've got to drink it, right? Well, the same thing is true with love. Love resides outside of us. We can't produce it or create it, but we must bring it in. And again, it's by thinking that we bring it in, right? And so we can't produce love or create love. If you think that you can, then let me just challenge you with this thought. If we could produce the love that we need to survive by, then solitary confinement in prison would never be a torture. Because you could just create all the love that you need to reside by, all of the companionship and communication and understanding and harmony and security and belonging and acceptance and so on and so forth. You could create it all for yourself and you wouldn't have any need for it. But solitary confinement is a problem, and the reason that it is a problem is because it isolates us from the source of the need, right? So is this just our condition or is it everybody's condition? Well, it's everybody's condition. So what kind of what kind of love do you need? Do you need a love that is personal or impersonal? Do you need a love that is pure or corrupted? Do you need a love that is unlimited or limited? Well, we need a love that, do you need a love that is complete or that is partial? We need a love that is personal, that is pure, that is unlimited, that is complete. That's the kind of love that we need. When have you ever seen that kind of love in a person? A spouse, child, parent, friend, coworker? You haven't. But that's the kind of love that we need. So obviously, you haven't run into somebody, a human being, that has what you need. Now, natural selection is a process where organisms better adapted to their environment tend to survive and produce more offspring, right? Now, it's not a belief that I adhere to, but just go with me a little bit here. All right, so you have an organism that has some kind of adaptation, some kind of mutation that provides an advantage, and now it can reproduce and it can produce more offspring, and more of those offspring have that advantaged gene or whatever it is, and so on. That's the whole idea with natural selection. Well, what happens if you introduce into an organism or a population a need for something for which there is no supply? If you need Jupiter dust, but there's no Jupiter dust, well, then you have just guaranteed the death of that organism or that population, because now it has a need for something which there is no supply. Well, what about love? We all need love, but none of us are the source of it. None of us can be the source of it because we need it ourselves. So if none of us are the source of it and we all need it, but we're still here, then that indicates that there has to be a source, and that source is not humans. That source must be something else, right? Can someone else breathe for me? Like if I'm suffocating, you over there, you can breathe a little extra for me? No. Can someone else drink for me? Or drink for you? So you're in the desert and you're about to die from thirst, and so I take a few extra swigs of water in order to satisfy your need? No, no. Can someone else eat for me? Children are starving to death in Africa, and so I can eat an extra meal for them over here in America? No, that doesn't work that way. Right? Only my actions, not the actions of another, affect my health, because it's only my actions that supply or don't supply the needs of my being, right? So another human being cannot be the source of that which I as a human being need, because they need it too. They're in need of it as well. And so they can't be the source of that which I need. So can another human being, another person, be my source of love? Can another person be my source of love? The answer is no, they can't. Why? Because they need the very same love too. So imagine that you have a neighbor, and the neighbor, it's one of those neighbors that just keeps coming over and asking for things, over and over and over again. And one day there's that desperate knock. And you can't ignore this one. And so you go to the door and you answer the door, and your neighbor's there, and he's desperate. He's found out that his daughter has come down with a terminal condition. Up until this point, it has been deemed to be 100% fatal. And but he's been doing some research, and he's found that a center in Russia, it has figured out how to treat this condition. And that center that can treat that condition, they have a 50% success rate in treating the condition. And since it's Russia, well, you have to pay everything up front, and it's only $5 million for treatment. So the neighbor is here asking you for $5 million. How many of you are going to give him the $5 million? Well, probably very few of you are going to give him $5 million. Why? Because everybody is horrible and not giving what they should? No, it's because you don't have it. You don't have 5 million. Maybe you have 1,000 sitting around and you can give him $1,000 towards that goal. But if he comes back later and asks for the rest of the $5 million, the 4,999,000, and then he keeps coming back and keeps asking for the rest of the 5 million, and keeps coming back and keeps asking for the 5 million, and keeps back and keeps coming back every day, multiple times a day, coming back, asking for the rest of the $5 million, desperate for the life of his daughter. How do you feel? Well, you're frustrated. Why? Because you don't have what he needs, but he thinks you have what you need. And so he keeps coming to you for what you don't have. And you're frustrated at him because he keeps trying to get from you what you don't have. And how does he feel? Well, he's frustrated as well because he thinks you've got what he needs, but you're not giving it to him. You're withholding. This is a basis of relationship issues that we find all over the place. Why is everybody frustrated? Because everybody's going to the wrong place. Everybody's going to the wrong source. You're going to your spouse to fulfill your need for love, but your spouse can't fulfill your need for love because your need is you need a personal love. You need an eternal love. You need a full love. You need an unselfish love. And your spouse doesn't have it. Doesn't have it. And so they can't supply it, but they think they should be able to supply your needs. And so when they can't supply your needs and you're frustrated, they get frustrated because they can't meet your needs. And there's frustration all around. Why? Simply because we're barking up the wrong tree. We're barking up the wrong tree. So whose responsibility is it for me to be filled with oxygen? Well, it's mine. I've got to breathe. And whose responsibility is it for me to be filled with water? That's mine. I've got to drink. And whose responsibility is it for me to be filled with proper nutrients? It's mine. I've got to eat. So have you ever been empty or felt empty when it comes to love? Yeah, we all have. We all have. So whose responsibility is it for me to be filled with love? Is it God's or is it mine? Well, how well does God do things? Right? God does all things well. And how often does he do all things well? All the time. So if it was God's responsibility for me to be filled with love, I would always be filled with love all the time. But if I've ever once, been less than 100% full of love, then that is evidence, and that's proof in and of itself that it's not God's responsibility to fill me with love. It's my responsibility to take the love that I need. It's my responsibility to take the love that I need. And so my emptiness is not because of God's unwillingness to fill me. My emptiness is because I haven't taken what I needed. So imagine that you've been starving for quite a while. Maybe you just came out of a concentration camp. And you are presented with a buffet restaurant, and the buffet restaurant has hundreds of options, and there's salads, and there's entrees, and there's hors d'oeuvres, and there's desserts, and there's all sorts of stuff, and you know, you get your plate and bowl and spoon and fork and knife and tray, and you go around and you start looking at things and smelling it and just drooling over it, and you know, just what are you going to get, and you decide what you're going to get, and you do something curious. You leave everything there and you walk outside, and you're still hungry. You're still emaciated. Whose responsibility is it that you're still hungry? Well, it's yours. Why? Because you didn't take and you didn't eat. You see, it's not the restaurant's responsibility to feed you. It's their responsibility to make sure that the food is there and it's available and it meets certain standards. But it's your responsibility to take what you need and to eat it. God has a buffet. He has a buffet of love. And that buffet of love includes things like grace and security and belonging and truth and freedom and justice and acceptance and mercy and self-sacrifice and self-denial. And it also has all sorts of stuff that's in there along with it as well. You know, understanding and companionship and all sorts of things that you can think of. I mean, this is just a short list. So you've got all of these things, all of these dishes that are there, part of God's buffet. And it's all available. and it's all full, right? God tells us in Hebrews 13 and verse 5 says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. That means that his buffet restaurant is never closed. It's always open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365.25 days a year. It is never closed. Jeremiah 31:3 says, I have loved you with an everlasting love. Therefore, with loving kindness, I have drawn you. That means that none of the dishes ever run out. You'll never go there looking for your favorite dish and that dish is empty, because he has an everlasting supply of that which you need. Right? And Isaiah 55, oh, this is the kicker. Verse 1, ho, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters, and you who have no money, come and buy and eat. Yes, come buy wine and milk without money and without price. Why can you come and take it without money and without price? Because he has paid for it for you. The restaurant owner has paid for it all, and he offers it to you free. The restaurant is always open, it is always full, and it is always free. If you walk away from that restaurant empty, it's not because of the fault of the restaurant owner. It's your own. But there's a reason why you don't come to his restaurant and take. There's a reason. There's a reason for that. There's other buffets available, like the buffet of selfishness. And that buffet has some enticing things like power and pleasure and popularity and possessions and position and so on. But it's got some badness along with it as well: betrayal and abuse and deceit and control and rejection and so on. It's got some other things like immediate gratification and and supplying your own needs. But there's a lot of badness in there mixed in with the things that are enticing. And this buffet is available to you from everyone else. Everyone else is offering this buffet of selfishness. And our default, you see, there's the buffet of God's love and there's the buffet of selfishness. And our default, gravity always pulls us down, 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 down. And so our default is to eat off of this buffet down here, not this one up here. Why is that? It's because of our human nature. Our sinful, fallen human nature gravitates towards, it desires, it revels in pleasure and popularity and possessions and position and power and other things like that. But along with it comes abuse and deceit and control and manipulation and betrayal and rejection and all of that kind of stuff as well. And so it ends up being, it tastes really, it's enticing at the beginning, but it'll bite you hard in the end, right? And we're enticed by this because of our nature. Now, you've heard the phrase, you are what you eat. You know, you take an apple and you eat that apple and the components of it get broken down. Some of it gets assimilated into the system and it becomes a part of who you are. Well, the same thing is true with here from a spiritual standpoint, from a relationship standpoint. You are what you eat, and you see it happen really fast. You just go home, right? You've been at work, maybe you've been out for a jog or other things like that. You're feeling good, you're happy, or whatever, things have gone well, and you go home, and you know the people at home are just snapping at each other, and they're just, and you walk in the door, and they're just right at you. How long is it before you're right back at them? Well, it doesn't take very long at all. It's like snap. Why? Because you ate from their buffet. You ate of their anger or their frustration or their snippety. I don't know what term would be best for that. But anyways, you ate from their buffet, and that which they had, you took in. That which they had, you took in, and it became a part of you. And what you take in, you give out. You don't see the taking, but you can see the giving, right? You don't see you taking from their buffet. You don't know that you take from their buffet, except that you turn right around and you respond the same way that they were acting. That's your evidence that you took from their buffet. And you know, maybe you're depressed and they're happy, and so you take of that and you take it in, and so you start lightening up and being happier and so on and whatever. Well, that's also evidence that you're taking from their buffet, and you're dependent upon them. That which you eat from, you're dependent upon. but that which you give to, you're independent of. So you have a choice. You do. You have a choice. God, by his grace, gives you the option of choosing from his buffet of love, even though human nature on its own has no inclination to take from this buffet. Absolutely none. Our default is right down here, and we will always go to the default if it were not for the grace of God to introduce into the heart a desire for something better, for something different. And when God starts planting that desire for something better in you, he has always made this buffet available, but now you become aware of it. And if you come and begin to eat from this buffet, guess what? You are what you eat. And so if you eat from mercy, guess what you give? Mercy. If you eat from justice, and I don't mean like I'm eye for eye, tooth for tooth, and so on. No, it's being just, right? It's being fair. It's making things work out well. If you eat from justice, guess what? You're going to be just. If you eat from freedom, you're going to give others freedom. If you eat the truth, you're going to give others truth. If you eat acceptance, you're going to accept others. If you eat belonging, you're going to be a place of belonging for them. If you eat security, you're going to be a place of security for them. What you eat, you give. Right? What you take in, you give away. So let's just look briefly at the life of Jesus, because he was the example here. In the life of Jesus, there was God's buffet of love, and how often did he eat from his Father's buffet? All the time. All the time. Did he ever once eat from the buffet of others? The answer is no, he never did. He never did. So he always ate from his Father's buffet. So he always took in grace and security and belonging and truth and freedom and justice and acceptance and mercy and every other aspect of love that you can think of. He always took that in. So guess what he gave? He gave the same stuff away. That's right. And he never took in from the garbage of others around him. And so he never responded with garbage when they gave that garbage or tried to give it to him, because he didn't take it. He didn't take it. He didn't eat it. We're told in John 2:24 and 25, but Jesus would not entrust himself to them. He would not take from them. To entrust means to put your trust in. He would not put his trust in them. Why? For he knew all people. He knew what was in them. He knew what was inside here. He knew the betrayal and the abuse, the deceit and the control and the manipulation and the selfishness and all of that kind of, and the pride and so on and so forth, right? He knew what was in them, and he didn't need any of it. He didn't need it. He didn't need a testimony about mankind, for he knew what was in each person. So he never ate from other people's buffet. But when God said, "This is my son whom I love, with him I am well pleased," Jesus took in that word from his Father, and he held on to it, and he continued to hold on to it consistently. So when he was around others, and they were angry at him, and they were frustrated at him, and they wanted to silence him, and they wanted to kill him, and so on and so forth, when they were doing all of that kind of stuff, did Jesus take it personally? Well, the answer is no. He didn't take it personally, because he didn't eat off of their buffet. At the time that they hated him and they called him a Samaritan and a sinner and every bad thing that they could call him, he was only taking from his Father's buffet, and his Father said, "This is my son in whom I am well pleased, whom I love," right? Whom I am well pleased. So even though they hated him, he still was the well-beloved of his Father, because he was taking off from his Father's buffet. And when they wanted to butter him up one side and down the other with praise and flattery and other things like that, he didn't take it. He didn't take it at all, because he only took what came from his Father. You know, the only one that can manipulate you is the one whom you eat from. If you eat from their buffet table, they can manipulate you. because you see them as your source and you must appease them so that you can get what you want from them. And so they can manipulate you, they can control you because you eat from their buffet. But if you never eat from their buffet, they can never control you. Never. Oh, there's so much freedom in this. And it's a really important concept, really important concept. All right, so what about taking things personally? Oh, we take all things personally, everything that happens. So let's say your cat's walking along, knocks over the cup, and now there's water all over the table. How come it's water that's all over the table? Or you walk along and you bump into the table and the cup falls over, spills over, and now there's tea all over the table. How come it's tea that's all over the table? Or earthquake happens and rattle, 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 and the cup falls over and now there's milk all over the table. How come it's milk that's all over the table? Or somebody comes along and they bump into the table and the glass falls over and now you have a non-alcoholic wine all over the table. How come it's non-alcoholic wine all over the table? Well, so many people believe that there's water on that it's water that's on the table because the cat knocked it over, or it's tea that's on the table because you bumped into it, or it's milk on the table because the earthquake knocked it over, or that it's non-alcoholic wine on the table because the other person bumped into it. But you know what? It doesn't matter what knocked the thing over. What comes out of it can only come out of it if it's in there. What comes out can only come out because it's in there. It can't come out otherwise, right? It cannot come out otherwise. It can only come out if it was in there. And it's true for people too. It doesn't matter what knocks you over. How you respond is because of what's inside, not because of what they did. Okay? So if you have somebody that's angry and frustrated at you and they're yelling at you and they're, bleep, bleep, and this, that, and the other, and they use your name in it and so on and so forth, it has not, what they say and what they do has nothing to do with you, even if it's aimed at you and even if it has your name attached to it. It's not about you because it couldn't come out of them if it weren't in them. What they say and what they do is completely, totally about them and not about you, even when it's aimed at you. You see, Jesus said in Luke 6:45, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. It couldn't come out unless it was in there. Solomon says that out of the heart flow the issues of life in Proverbs 4:23. So the Bible is telling us that it can't come out of you if it's not in you. So what people do to you and say about you is not about you, it's about them. So it's not about me, it's about them. I don't have to take it personally. I don't have to take it personally because it's not really about me. So you've heard the phrase, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. You've heard the other one probably, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will crush my soul. Which one is true? Well, which one you believe? Because if you believe that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me, and you don't take in the words of others, they can never hurt you. They can only hurt you when you take them in and you believe them. Because when you take them in and you believe them, then it becomes a part of you. And your own thinking damages your own body. But when you realize that you don't have to take it, when you realize that what they say is about them, not about you, and then you don't have to take it. You don't have to take it. You can take what God says about you. And you know what God says about you? He says the same thing that he said to Jesus. This is my beloved child, whom I love, in whom I am well pleased. You see, he was saying that to Jesus. Yes, he was saying it to Jesus. But when we're covered by Jesus, the blood of Jesus, and we enter into that relationship with him, he's saying it to us too. And so we're the well-beloved of the Father. And so if somebody says, well, you're a wretched, miserable, this, that, and the other thing, and blah, 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 we don't have to take it. We can believe in and trust in the word of God that I am the well-beloved because of Jesus. Right? Now, also, if somebody else is doing or saying something that annoys or frustrates you, your annoyance and your frustration is not about them, it's about you. It doesn't matter what they said, doesn't matter what they did, doesn't matter how they said it and how they did it. How you respond has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with you because it couldn't come out of you if it weren't in you. So when you find yourself in situations where you come spilling out with anger, or you come spilling out with depression, or you come spilling out with self-pity, or you come spilling out with bitterness, or you come spilling out with guilt and shame and other types of things like that, just recognize that those things are what's inside, and that's what's spilling out. And by God's grace, He's allowing it to spill out. He's allowing it to spill out for your good, because you must see what's inside. Because if you don't see what's inside, you'll never do anything about it. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about how crazy we are. I'm not going to get into the craziness today, but we really are really crazy. All right, imagine that you're giving a gift to, well, you want to get a gift for a special individual, as the person that you love or you love the most. And let's just say that it's a special occasion. I don't know, maybe it's an anniversary, a birthday, Christmas, something. I don't know. It's a special occasion, and it's months ahead, and you want to get them the perfect gift. And so you think about them and their personality and their likes and their dislikes and so on. And you go shopping online, you go shopping in the stores, you eventually find the gift, and you're like, oh, this is the perfect gift, but you don't have enough money. So you save, and for a few months you save up the money, you finally have enough, and you purchase the gift for them. And you get it, and you wrap it nicely and everything, you put it aside, get a nice card to go along with it as well. And the day of that special occasion comes, and you go to the door and you knock on the door, and they come out. And with a smile, you hand them their gift, and they take the gift and they throw it on the ground and they stomp on it and they slam the door. How do you feel? Crushed? Upset? Angry? Frustrated? Rejected? Right? These are common responses that I've heard from others in that scenario. Question is, why? Why do you feel that way? Well, let's look at a different scenario. Let's say that you work for UPS, and you've been working for UPS for years, and you enjoy your job, you like what you do, you're kind of one of those brown people, right? You drive brown vehicles, you wear brown clothes, you take brown packages up and knock on brown doors, and so on. And so that's what you do, and that's what you like. And so you stop one day at a particular residence, and you get out, and you get the package, and you go up to the door. You knock on the door, and the resident comes out, and you have them sign for the package, and they sign for the package, and you hand them the package. They take the package, and they throw it on the ground, and they stomp on it, and they slam the door. How do you feel? Cautious, confused, curious, right? But do you feel rejected? Do you feel angry, frustrated, upset, rejected, crushed? Well, no. So why is our response different in the first scenario from the second one? Why am I so upset and everything in the first scenario, but I'm really not that upset in the second scenario? I might be curious, cautious, yes, so why? Well, in the first scenario, I believe that it's mine. It's mine. That was my present. It was purchased with my money. It represents my love, and that was my loved one. In the second scenario, it's not mine, right? That wasn't my present. It wasn't purchased with my money. I mean, I'm just making money delivering packages, right? And if you stomp on your package, I'm still making money. If you accept the package, I'm still making my money, and so on. It's not my love, right? Because it didn't come from me. And well, I don't even know who that person is, so they're not my loved one. So to the degree to which you believe that it's yours, to the degree to which you believe that it's yours, is the degree to which you're going to take it personally when the present is not treated as you thought it should be. You're going to take it personally because you think it's yours. But the degree to which you believe it's not yours is the degree to which none of that is going to be true, because it's not about you. It's not yours. You're just the delivery person of those goods. There's a secondary reason why we end up being so personally hurt when the present is rejected, and that is because we didn't receive. What didn't we receive? Well, there was an expectation that we had along with the gift. We had an expectation that the other individual was going to respond well, that they were going to be grateful for the gift and thank us, or maybe we expect a hug or a kiss or an invitation in and some time of fellowship and, and other things like that, and getting some gratitude back from them and so on. So what we didn't get back what we expected from the gift. What do you mean we didn't get back what we expected? You mean I expected something in return? Absolutely. How do you know if you expect something in return? Just don't get the return and see how you respond. If you don't get the return and you're frustrated or you're upset or you feel cheated or other things like that, then you know you did it for you, not for them. Your gift actually was for you. It wasn't for them, even though you gave the gift to them, but you gave the gift to them because of what you might receive back from giving the gift. Like, ooh, yeah. No, probably some of you are thinking, no, that's not my motives. I give the gift to give the gift. Okay. What is I love you? So you have a spouse, let's say a spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, and you tell them I love you. Is I love you a statement of fact, or is it a request? All right, well, maybe you say, well, it's a statement of fact. Okay, so if you say I love you to your loved one, and they say, well, that's nice. And then you tell them again later, I love you, and they say, well, that's your issue. And later you say, I love you, and they say, okay. And every time you tell them I love you, they respond in some similar way. How long are you going to tell them I love you? Forever? If I love you is a statement of fact for their benefit, then it doesn't matter how they respond to I love you. You will continue to give I love you because it's for their good. It's for their benefit. And it's because you do love them. And your love for them is not based upon how they respond. Your love for them is based upon the fact that you have love and you're giving it away. Now, where do you get the love from? You're not the source, God is. And so you must take that source from him and give it away. But if you would stop saying, I love you, because of how the individual responds, then it shows you that your reason, your purpose for saying, I love you is not for them. It's for you. It's bait that you fish with. And what are you fishing for? You're fishing for, I love you in return. Now, I'm not saying this to say that that you individually have a problem. No, it's all of our problem, right? It's all of our problem, and so we run into this problem because of our fallen, selfish human nature, which we inherited from Adam and Eve. You see, human love gives, but we give for the purpose of receiving. Human love is an investment. We put something of value in someone else, but we do so with an expectation of value back. So we might put in time, but we're looking for belonging. We might put in teddy bears, but we're looking for acceptance. We might put in communication, but we're looking for companionship, right? So we will use things and we will give things to individuals with an expectation of receiving things of greater value back. Humanity and humanity's love, human love, is an investment. It's a putting of value in someone else with an expectation of returns from them. And how much do you need back from them? Well, it depends on how much your expectations are. You've heard the phrase no strings attached, right? Well, in human love, there's always strings attached There's always an expectation of return. And the greater the gift, well, the greater the expectation associated with it. And so, because of that, we are afraid of bigger gifts. We are. Imagine that you have a neighbor and the neighbor comes over, you've never met them before, they just moved into the neighborhood, they knock on the door, they introduce themselves, hi, I'm so and so, and I'm just here in the neighborhood, and just introducing, meeting the neighbors, and here they hand you a $20 bill. So here, use this for whatever you want, and they walk away. What are you thinking? Okay. Now, imagine that they come, it's the first time, you've never met them before, but same scenario happens now for the first time in a different way. So now they come, they knock on the door, they introduce themselves, just meeting the neighbors and so on. They hand you a briefcase, not a briefcase, a suitcase. And they say, here, use this for whatever you want. And they walk away. And you take the suitcase, it's a big duffel bag, and you unzip it, and $100 bills just start spilling out of that that suitcase. Now what are you thinking? Which gift would you rather, or do you feel more comfortable with? Right? Which gift do you feel more comfortable with? Is it the $20 bill, or is it the suitcase full of $100 bills? And if you had the option of having to take one or the other, which one would you take? Well, when I've talked to audiences around the world, the vast majority of audiences, not all of them, but the vast majority of audiences will take the $20 bill and will never take the suitcase. Why? Because we know in human experience, we know from the lives that we lived and the people that we've interacted with, the bigger the gift, the bigger the string, and the harder they can pull when they're done. Because we know that a gift is not a gift. A gift is an investment with an expectation of return. And we are afraid to accept the greater gifts because we are afraid of the requirements that might come associated with that gift. And we do this to God too. We'll accept the little gifts because we think little gifts have little strings. But we're reluctant to accept the bigger gifts because we believe that the bigger gift will have bigger strings and there'll be a bigger tug on that string by God later. And we're not sure we want that responsibility. That's how human love operates. That's how we work. And how much return is needed? It just depends on how much you expect. If you have high expectations of return, then you have to have a high return in order to meet those expectations and to have a successful investment, an ROI. If your expectations are low, then you have to have a low return in order to meet your expected end of that investment, right? Your return on investment. And so the expectation is what determines how high or how low you must receive, or how much you must receive in return for that gift. And that the expectation might be dependent upon what you think of the relationship to the individual that you gave to, how strong that relationship is, and how important that relationship is to you, and so on. All of these factors kind of play into that. But it gives us an idea of how or why we give the gifts that we do, and why we have the expectations of return that we do. And I'll tell you this right now. Well, let me ask you this question. Does God invest in his children? The answer to that is no. God does not invest in his children. And I'm not going to answer that question now. We're going to answer that question tomorrow. Because tomorrow what we're going to do is we're going to look at the heart. We're going to look at the heart, not the blood pumping muscle, but the heart. And we're going to see how the heart functions. And we're going to see how upside down and how backwards the heart is. so that we see everything from the wrong perspective. We have the wrong standard by which we measure everything. And therefore, we get everything backwards, we get everything wrong. And we're going to see how that's the case tomorrow. And then we're going to show the solution to it as well. So we're going to go through a real dark tunnel tomorrow, but it's a tunnel. And so there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and we're going to get through to the light tomorrow as well. And so I'm going to stop screen sharing here so that we can get to questions and answers. I see that there's